Hi everyone, I thought today we'd quickly go through how I do my basing for my raptors. So going for this really kind of urban rubble basing. I think they look great with this force that I've been slowly working on. And here's the Praetor base, which I kind of went all out on to make sure that he was elevated and front and center of my force. So the bases themselves are pretty easy to execute. Just takes a little bit of patience while you wait for things to dry, but we're simply just going to be using a 32mm base today. I've got some 3D printed bits. This is from Epic Basing. They do STLs, but they also do mail order 3D bits as well. I'm not affiliated in any way, but these are the bits I like to use. I think they're great. Using a little bit of cork to make some elevation to start off with, and then we'll be going over the top with milliput, which you can get from any good hobby store. Okay, so first stage here is we're just going to be getting some elevation. So all I'm going to be doing is taking a piece of cork, roughly the size of the base, and I'm just going to try and get it as close to the size of the base as possible. So that looks pretty good to me. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. It's good that it's got lots of rough edges, and I'm just kind of going around and tearing a few extra pieces off as well. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply some super glue to the base and stick this down on top. Okay, and the next stage of this process, once your base is dry, is you're going to mix this milliput. Now, I would encourage everyone to wear some gloves for doing this, because as you can see, it gets all over your fingers. It comes in two pieces and they're both different colours. You've got to mix it together until there's no more streaks in there. And what this does is it dries like hard clay over the next couple of hours. So while it's still malleable, we're just going to tear off pieces, and we're just going to build up some height to the base. Okay, so I'm just positioning where I might want some pieces. What I am going to do is I'm just going to put down a very thin layer of super glue across the top, and when the milliput dries, this is going to give it something to stick to. So I'm just going to pop down a few little pieces. It's okay not to be neat. At the end of the day, we're building up this kind of rubble base, so we want those rough edges. It's only going to add to the overall look and feel of the finish that we're trying to achieve. So I'm just going to tear off a couple more pieces, okay, and I'm going to flatten out the top, and you should have something that looks a bit like this. Now, it looks very messy, I know, but the next stage is we're actually going to bring in our epic basing parts, and we're going to decide where we may want to position those. So I'm going to have probably this piece further on the edge here, and all I'm going to do is take a little bit of super glue right along the bottom of the printed part and just press it into the milliput. Okay, so you can see it's pressed into the milliput. It doesn't matter that it's kind of squirted a little bit out the bottom there, as long as you've got a nice flat surface underneath. There's no gaps for things to hide in out. And what I'll also do is I'll tear off a little bit more milliput that I've already mixed, and I'll just kind of press this into some of those gaps. We're going to be going over this with texture paint and also some small pebbles, stones and gravel to build up more texture, so don't worry too much about it being perfect. It looks like it's a disaster when you start doing this, but by the time you're finished, you get this fantastic result. Okay, and when you've finished applying the printed parts, you should have something that looks like this. So as you can see, it's given plenty of elevation and plenty of different pieces that's going to make the base really stand out. So all I'm going to do next is I'm going to take some AK dry ground. Okay, I've got a big tub of this. This is my go-to. Doesn't really matter what the color is. It's kind of this like custardy looking color. And I'm gonna take an old brush. I'm just gonna scoop a bit off and start applying it to the base, just to bring in now a bit of texture. Okay, and once you've gone around the whole model with the dry ground, you'll have a result that looks a little bit like this. As I said, it's not too important to be neat because we want it to look like crumbled brick and rubble, and we don't want any symmetry anyway, so the rougher the better, really. All I'm going to do now, while this is still wet, is I'm going to take my little tub of gravel that I've kind of made myself over the years. So it's got lots of bits of cork and bark and sand and lots of different sizes of stones and things. And I'm just going to take a little bit of that and literally just sprinkle it onto the top of the model. Now, where there's some of the bigger rocks, I'm just going to press those ever so slightly in, but I'm also going to go around the sides with some of this finer gravel too. Okay, so I've gone away, I've let this dry fully, and then I've just primed the whole base black. So for the painting stage, we're going to use 4 paints. They're all from AK. The first one we've got is grey brown. We've got basalt grey, ice yellow, and then we're going to be doing a dry brush of warm grey. So first stage is I am just going to predominantly from below, but get the grey brown across the whole model, mainly hitting where the underside of the rubble is, where it's likely going to be stained with mud and muddy water from the crumbling buildings above. Okay, so just allowed the grey brown to dry, and now we're going to move on to basalt grey. So what we're going to be doing here is just hitting where the concrete rubble is, so those basing bits that we used, but also maybe highlighting any big rocks that we've got on the base as well. So I'm just going to start by hitting that concrete and rebar at the top and on the side there, these big concrete beams that we've got too, and I'm just going to work my way around the model and make sure that I get any concrete parts from all angles, including underneath. Okay, so I've allowed that to dry. The next stage here is I've simply just added ice yellow to the previous mix in my airbrush, and this is just to do one quick kind of highlight on any of the concrete parts. So I've mixed this in my airbrush, and I'm simply going to just apply it to the highest points of the rubble. Okay, again, not needing to be too accurate with this. The oil is going to knock it back, but just highlighting parts of the rubble where you want to draw a little bit more attention. Okay, and the last couple of stages of this base now is we are going to just dry brush the warm grey across the whole of the base, and I've just got a bit of cork here that I use as a texture palette with the warm grey. I'm just going to take a bit of my brush and I'm just going to give the whole base a dry brush of the warm grey, making sure to catch all the edges of the exposed concrete and rebar, edges of the concrete blocks that have fallen down, and we're just reintroducing some definition back into the base. Okay, and just to paint in any metallics, I'm using Vallejo Jet Exhaust, which is one of my favourite metal colours for army painting. It's a lovely kind of dirty metal, very oily metal. So, and we're just going to be going around and hitting any of these exposed little areas of rebar and painting those in. Okay, last stage and we're done. I've just mixed some burnt umber oil paint from Windsor and Newton in my little palette here, and I'm simply going to be applying this pretty liberally all over the model, paying special attention to the recesses. Now I'm putting this on fairly thin for the blocks of concrete here. I'm just going to paint the whole thing, and then I like to just go over with my finger just to take the majority off the top of the concrete there. So I've applied to the top there. I'll just give it a quick wipe with my finger, and that just gives me the effect that I want. Again, applying this to all areas where you've got like the tops of these rebar and things. I like to apply a little bit more just to create some definition. But I'm just doing it by look and feel, really, going around, taking my time, seeing what looks good, and when I feel like I've added enough, I kind of stop. So there's no set amount of oil to add to this. It's just about how you feel you want it to look. If you want it to look more dirty, then obviously apply a little bit more. But if you're wanting the effect to be quite subtle, then you don't need to apply as much. So I've gone away, left this for about 30 minutes. I didn't apply the oil too thick, so it dried nice and quick, and we're left with this really beautiful result. So as you can see, all the browns and greys have kind of all blended together now after the oil wash stage. We've still got a bit of the metallics and things shining through. So I mean, you could stop here. I think they look great. But the last stage is I'm just going to add some Vallejo pigment powder. So this is brown iron oxide, and as you can see from my prayer tour here, I've just added some into the base, just to give an extra little pop of interest. I chose a red pigment powder because obviously red contrasts with green, but you know, you can use any color that you feel on the space at this stage. You know, even some kind of warm siennas and things like that would be good as well. And I'm just establishing, you know, just a little bit of interest. So I like to go around the bases of the rebar and the fallen concrete, just to add a bit more life to the base. You know, it gives the impression that there's kind of been wet rust on the ground, and this has maybe been lying here for some time. So I just like the little pop of colour it gives to the base. Okay, and with that, the base is complete, and I think they look great. Obviously, you could use these for any faction, really. Even, you know, the blue boys, ultramarines with a bit of red contrasting the base would look great. But I love how these look across the gaming table and in my display cabinet, and I hope you agree. They just add so much life to the miniature. I think they look fantastic. So thank you very much for sticking around to the end. Do ask any questions in the comments below. Tried to keep this video as short as possible today. As I said, it's a pretty simple base to execute, and I think it adds so much to the character of the miniature. But yeah, thanks for joining me for this one, and I'll see you in the next.